One of the biggest takeaways for us with Mr. Mckown is you have to show up, you have to be engaged, and you absolutely have to act. He didn't sit. He didn't say, oh, that's interesting. He said, oh, we got to do this now.
For generations, Florida citrus has been the backbone of Florida agriculture.
A refreshing taste of sunny Florida.
Through the years, the industry overcame a number of threats, from natural disasters to man-made ones. Many of the challenges that growers faced, however, could not be managed in the groves, but rather at the negotiating tables. They needed a voice to protect their interests and their livelihoods. And since the 1960s, that voice has been Bobby Mckown. Born in a small farm in South Georgia, Bobby Mckown grew up in Winter Haven, Florida, where his family moved in 1945. A President's Honor Roll graduate of the University of Florida in 1959, Mckown went back to school at Polk Community College in pursuit of a career in the Florida citrus industry. In 1965, he was hired as an assistant to the Executive Vice President for the Florida Canners Association, at that time when frozen concentrate orange juice was suffering from quality issues.
I never will forget 1965, we had the 62 freeze, and it almost destroyed the industry because they picked up all the fruit off the ground, it was frozen, it was not mature, and they processed it. And it made a terrible product, frankly, and the consumer was driven away from the product. That's when we put in the FCOJ Quality Improvement Program. We increased the bricks of the juice, the standards, and made it to the highest quality possible. After
9 years at the FCA, Mckown became the president and general manager of the Florida Agricultural Research Institute in 1975. In December of 1979, he accepted the position of executive vice president and CEO with the then financially struggling Florida Citrus Mutual. Under the burden of $250,000 of high-interest loans, he set his mind to getting the organization back in the black. And within the first year on the job, Mckown helped Citrus Mutual pay off its debt. Mckown's negotiating skills would later play a role, winning a lawsuit against Tropicana that could have cost Florida growers over $300 million in damages. Tropicana would appeal the decision 13 times to the International Trade Court in New York City and would lose each case. During his 21-year tenure at Florida Citrus Mutual, Mckown oversaw a citrus industry that enjoyed highly profitable growth, with groves flourishing across the state. The industry, however, faced crippling hard freezes in '83 and '85, with a near-fatal blow coming in 1989. That year, a freeze wiped out the groves north of I-4 and devastated Polk County, the state's largest citrus producer. Many growers felt they had no option but to abandon their groves. Mckown flew to Washington to create financial incentives for growers to remain in the industry. Thanks to his efforts, 99% of the damaged groves were replanted. Mckown's negotiation skills were also needed to deal with threats not limited to natural disasters.
I remember when Clinton came along with the NAFTA deal, and there wasn't real great excitement about it because we felt like, and I think time proved that we pretty much gave away the farm, so to speak, if I could use that terminology, no pun intended.
What we saw is just a very dangerous and competitive trade agreement with 34 South American, Latin American countries had to be tightly negotiated because they wanted to produce exactly what Florida was growing.
I think Bobby and folks could sort of see the handwriting on the wall that it was coming down the pike and it was going to go through. And so when you see that, as a lobbyist or an association manager, then you try to cut the best deal you can.
Mckown participated in many hard-fought negotiations in support of the citrus industry and agriculture in over 27 trade agreements. Whether it was NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Caribbean Basin Initiative, Canadian Free Trade Agreement, or GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. When it came to representing the industry, Mckown could not be out-hustled.
No matter where we went in trade meetings in Washington, in discussion with congressional leaders, in discussion with staff, generally Bobby had been there before us.
You had to be the spokesman for the growers. And I said, if I'm going to do that, and we have to have all the basic information so that we're always representing it in a proper and factual basis. And I adopted the policy that President Kennedy's PR person adapted, and that is this: the media is looking for a story, so give them one every day. And that's what I did. From that, I guess they began to say in Europe and different places that I was the orange juice spokesman, the orange juice, Mr. Orange Juice.
From Jimmy Carter to George W. Bush, Mckown would have 5 presidential appointments, advising and educating the special trade representative about citrus. His talents were also utilized through 15 gubernatorial appointments.
And we all know Bobby has an opinion on just about everything. There were times when he would call me so many times a day that I often wondered who exactly I was working for. He was so passionate about what he was doing. I think he did help to make Florida Citrus Mutual the absolute go-to organization for all of us and for many in the administration for information that we needed to get our jobs done.
When Bobby retired in 1998, Florida harvested over 300 million total boxes of citrus, the largest crop in the history of the industry. Many of the trade agreements, policies, and trade practices that had Bobby's fingerprints are still in use today. But his biggest legacy may be the impact he had on those who now lead the industry.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me, working for Mr. Mckown. And having that be my first job right out of college. You know, you come out of school with this great knowledge of what you think is your field, but what you don't know are the little details. And Mr. Mckown was one of those who was very detailed, still is.
Our members were citrus growers. All of them were citrus growers. So I worked for the citrus growers, and I never forgot who I worked for. The board set policy, and I was to implement it. And I thought, you implement it to the very best you could. And I have a policy. I think you can do better today than we did yesterday, and we'll do better tomorrow than we did today.